Blog Talk Radio.
Hey there! Welcome to Big Blend Radio with your hosts, Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.
From Hawaii's volcanoes and the ancient Puebloan city complexes of Chaco Canyon out in northern New Mexico to remote Loggerhead Key in Dry Tortugas National Park in Florida and the southwest crossroads of historic Fort Union, the National Parks Arts Foundation partners with a wide range of parks and monuments to offer these absolutely amazing and unique artist residency programs. You definitely want to check it out if you're a musician, an artist, a poet, a painter, photographer, filmmaker, writer. Doesn't really matter what you do in the arts. This is open to everybody who is in the creative spirit. And so check it out. Go to nationalparksartsfoundation.org. We're very excited because we do our Big Blend Radio Toast to the Arts and Parks show every first Friday. And we've been doing it today 7 years, Nancy. So welcome to Big Blend Radio, everyone. Cool. 7 years. Which has been amazing. Interviewing artists who are in the residency program every single month, as well as founder Tanya Ortega. We've got to give her a big shout out for everything that she's done for artists and for parks. That's what's so beautiful about this program is what the artists get out of it, what the public gets out of it, and what the parks get out of it. And we're going to be talking about that today. It's a special live show. You know, a lot of us, we do a lot of Zoom video things now, but today's a special live show. We're airing live from Peachtree City, Georgia. And actually, we are at an art studio, Nancy. Isn't this cool?
Yes, we are.
It makes sense. So we're at ceramic artist Andrea Faye's Studio B. So check her out at AndreaFaye.com. So anyway, we've got 5 artists joining us. They've been on our shows before. And they're going to talk about their art. They're going to talk about their music. They're going to talk about their residency experience. They're going to talk about what's coming up for them in 2023, what happened in 2022. Yeah, we want to know the scandal from last year, right, Nancy? Because you can't just put a year to bed without drama.
Gossip.
We want the gossip, right?
It is.
I know. So anyone, go to nationalparksartsfoundation.org. That's the website. If you're an artist and if you're in a destination with a park, or maybe you are in the park service, whether it's a state park, a national park, check out the amazing programs that they have. So our first guest is painter Alice Lease. Alice is awesome. She's done, 5 residencies through the National Parks Arts Foundation, Fort Union National Monument up in northern New Mexico, and all of the visual artists on the show today, the painters, have done this National Monument, Fort Windy, we should call it. She's also been out on Loggerhead Key, the remote Loggerhead Key, where she spent a month off-grid in Dry Tortugas National Park, and she's done 2 residencies at Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. So I encourage you to go to her website, AliceLease.com, and that's Leese. So welcome back to the show, Alice. How are you?
Thank you, Lisa and Nancy. I'm doing well. I hope you all are too.
Well, we're doing
we
good.
Are.
We're used to, having video chats with you in your studio. We're going to have to come see you this year. That's the thing for 2023. We're finally going to come and see you and Rob and the ranch.
Make that a goal. Yeah, you need to come see this place. It's a big sandbox.
Well, how big is your ranch?
Oh, it's big enough that it's a real ranch. It's the kind that makes you sweat. It's not a weekend ranch. It's not a come out from town whenever you feel like it ranch.
Hobby.
It's one that you have to stay on and keep up and work on. So it's big enough that, well, out here it's a normal sized ranch, but in some parts of the U.S. it'd be really big. But here it's pretty normal.
It's West Texas, right, for everyone to kind of get a visual idea. Yeah. Awesome. We definitely want to come out and learn more and see. Just get into, I know that this is a family ranch. Getting into painting, do any of your family paint?
Oh, my grandmother painted, and I have an uncle. He draws horses at times. He was a really a visual guy, and he was real mechanical and he's a great cowboy. And I think he's 92 years old now. So
wow.
But yeah, and then I have some cousins that draw. So art sort of runs in our family, and then I have a brother who's an opera singer. So the arts were, my parents always really had us go to museums and things, and really it exposed us to the arts when we were small.
That's cool.
Yeah, it is. So it's important.
I want to see opera on horseback.
Oh, yeah. Now that's an idea. Huh.
Yeah. we in Lake Havasu, we went on a gondola ride in Lake Havasu, Arizona. Like total, like the Italian gondola rides with the guy in the little striped shirt and everything. He's paddling, and we went under the London Bridge, the real London Bridge, right? Yeah. And bats flew out. It was sunset, and all these bats flew out. And the guy was singing opera in Italian, and then he did German and Japanese.
Japanese.
Wow.
Uh-huh.
That was different.
Wow. That's surreal.
The Japanese part was different.
I wish I filmed that. You know, it was like one of those experiences that will never die. So opera on horseback is my new goal for 2023. We'll see what we can do.
Hey, yeah, that's a great idea.
I love it. I want to bring our next guest on, environmental artist Patricia Cummins. She was in Fort Union, and I know that she's based out of Florida. She's also won an award this year. Or last year, 2022, by the Florida Art Education Association in October. She is also an educator. So I encourage you to go to her website, patcummins.com, and that's CUMMINS. Welcome back to the show. Patricia, how are you?
I'm great. I'm also nationalparkpainter.com, which I'm very proud to have the domain name for.
Oh, that's a smart one.
Yeah, I owe that to my son, who said, "Mom, you got to get a good domain name," and I was in shock that it was still available, but it's me.
Swooped it.
Good for him. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So where are you today? Because I know you've been going up to upstate New York. Where are you today?
I'm in Miami. I'm in sunny Miami. It's a beautiful day. We had one cold snap. I hope that's not our only winter weather. It's supposed to get cool this weekend, so I'm excited about that. It's great to paint outdoors here at this time of the year, and that's mainly what I do. I paint on location. And in between, I've been working on applications to other national parks, Shenandoah, Weir Farm. I've done 15. I've been very lucky to do 15 residencies, and it's really been an exciting experience over the past 20 years. It's I grew up in New York City, and I lived near Forest Park, and it was a huge influence in my development through the years. The first art school I went to was called the Forest Park School of Art. It was just a little tiny school, with one instructor, but it meant a lot to me, and it started me in the right direction.
Very nice. Very nice. And I think it's interesting when you go to so many residencies in so many different terrains and landscapes and different pieces of history, a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
That's cool. And Fort Union that you were in, that's a magical place. We finally got to go there last year or the year before. I can't remember what year. Things zoom by a little fast.
It's a blur.
It was windy nonetheless, but just amazing because you can see elk and prairie. There's prairie dogs out in some of those areas, but you also got
the pronghorn.
Yeah,
I saw those every day because the cabin that I stayed at was right across from that field, and the pronghorn were there every day. It was wonderful
beautiful.
to watch them. Yeah.
I love them.
That's one of the things that's so great about being a national park resident artist and being invited it's different than just going for the day and sneaking in and getting a glimpse of, an animal. You get to see their habits, and you get to name the deer. You get to recognize them and tell them apart from each other. It's quite different being there for a couple of weeks or even a month at a time.
I agree. I want to bring our next guest on is Nancy Hirschberger. Nancy was on our show, was it last year? 2021, I think, actually, when she was at Fort Union. And Nancy's a fiber artist. She does these amazing painted quilts. You can go to her website, nancyhirschberger.com, and that's HERSHBERGER. So welcome back to the show. Nancy, how are you?
Thank you. I am just fine and dandy here in chilly Pennsylvania.
I remember we were in Pennsylvania when you were in Fort Union and did your interview when we were in Northeast Pennsylvania. And we were there in November. It was chilly. We got a little dusting of frosty white stuff. And now we're really glad to be in Peachtree City, Georgia, where the sun is shining today.
I bet you are.
Oh, man. Going to Fort Union had to be a complete different landscape change, from Pennsylvania.
It was incredible. First of all, because I don't get out west much at all. And I had a brief conversation with Alice Lease before I went out there. And what we talked about was, Alice, I owe you a lot because you got me ready to, you told me what to expect. Wind.
yeah, that's so true.
Every
windy is
single day. Yes, and
crazy, huh?
wide open country, which we don't have here. I'm in the mountains, and the Allegheny Mountains, part of Appalachia. But anyway, so what I wasn't prepared for, a couple of things. Being from the East Coast at 1,250 feet elevation, that when you drive to the southwest, you're actually going uphill. I didn't know that. I honestly didn't know that, and didn't start feeling a little funny. Honestly thought I was coming down with COVID until we got to Amarillo, Texas. We drove out there, and we got to Amarillo, Texas, and it's the West. It's, it's people carrying guns on their hip, and it's just so, but, that said, I saw that here, so never mind. But driving out there was an experience that I will never forget, and I loved every minute of it because it's so different from here. And then we get to Las Vegas, New Mexico, and it was, it's just different. It's windy. It's kind of dusty. It's big, wide open spaces. Your mountains are further apart out there. And then we drive up that long road. And another thing I wasn't quite prepared for was your speed limits out there. You go 75 miles an hour, and that's normal. Holy moly. And then, when you slow down for road construction, you slow down to 65. Our speed limit isn't even that. So that, those were a couple of eye-openers. Loved it. Just loved it. And then we got out there, and my husband drove with me, and then he flew home. And then I was there for a month. And I drive up to the fort, and there are these beautiful ruins. Holy moly. I've never seen anything like it, and I'll probably never see anything like it again. I just loved it. And the people there, Ranger Greg and Mary Sladky, Sladky, those people were wonderful. And BJ, she was great. They were so helpful. And, they just clued me in, and I honestly didn't think I'd have such a bee in my bonnet today about this radio show, because quite frankly, I was really nervous. But now that you got me started,
she's rolling. She's going to start painting after this. You can be grabbing that fiber and painting it up. I love this. I love it though because it really was. You're giving us a mental painting really of what it's like going there, and it is out of there. And by the way, living in the Southwest for so long, and then spending so much time in Texas, New Mexico, I'm used to those speed limits. But apparently, Indiana, you can get pulled over in a cornfield. I'm just saying. It can happen to you if you're used to really, exciting speed limits that don't go from 50 to 55 every mile. Yeah. They change, and then you find yourself pulled over on a tiny road. But I got out of it, so I'm very happy about that.
I know. You were very flirty, and he was very cute.
I was not flirty. I was just very polite. I was very polite. All right, so I want to bring our next guest on, composer and musician Glenn McClure. Glenn has been on our show a couple of times now, maybe 2-3 times, and I encourage you to go to his website, artforbrains.com. It's one of my favorite, talk about website names, one of my favorites.
I love it.
He was in Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, but he's traveled the world. He has done so much. He's also part of the Antarctic Artists and Writers Collective. He was on the show was it a year ago? Let's not even talk about time anymore. He was on the show with Michelle Schwengo-Regala, and, it's an amazing project that they're doing, but he's always involved in awesome projects. So welcome back, Glenn. How are you?
I'm doing well because, of course, I'm back in Hawaii right now, and spending some time with my friend and Antarctic colleague, Michelle. But I must admit, I'm not sure if the combination of me and Hawaii has sort of a bad vibe for American democracy because I'm here right now while they're having all this trouble in the House of Representatives, and when I was on the Big Island with my National Parks Foundation residency, there was a government shutdown. So I know that correlation is not causation, but it makes me wonder a little bit.
But at least you didn't get swept away by lava.
Yeah.
How about that? Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah. It's been as a composer of mostly choral music. The COVID times have shut down a lot of stuff, a lot of interest in new music, because the worst scientific thing you can do in COVID is to professionally project your particulates out of your mouth, in the way that singers do. And so now with COVID, in at least a manageable position, it's been great to see some new projects coming back, and
awesome.
Really excited about some new things. The Lake Champlain Basin project, the lake that borders northern New York State, Vermont, and Quebec. I'm going to be doing a 2-year project with them, mentoring 3 other composers. In taking some of the scientific data from the Lake Champlain watershed and turning it into music, telling a musical scientific story of that beautiful part of the country.
Can you explain that real quick to people because this is so fascinating, and that's why I know every time Andy's been on the show, I think I've brought you up, and to every musician I know that does any kind of like crazy recording stuff, I always dude, you've got to hear about Glenn McClure, man. This is insane. So can you explain how you take data, scientific data, and then turn it into musical notes?
Sure, yeah. I mean, from the time that we're in 2nd or 3rd grade, our elementary school music teachers give us a bunch of numbers and tell us to make a picture out of it. We make a bar graph or a line graph, right? So we take numbers and turn it into a picture because we can understand the numbers in a new way if we see it visually. And there's huge industries right now about the visualization of big data. Sonification just takes that same idea but says, what happens if we listen to data? What happens if we translate those numbers into a way that professional listeners can analyze it? And so basically what happens, there's just a little bit of mathematics. It's a combination of things you probably learned in 4th or 5th grade that can take a list of numbers and turn it into a melody. If you have a data set with several parallel lists of numbers, well, then you do all of those and then you get harmony out of it. And it's an exciting field in especially the world of eco music these days, okay, because it transforms the work of the eco musician from mostly what we do, okay, or what we have done in the past is to react very personally and emotionally to an environmental landscape. Okay, and that's valid, that's wonderful, that's perfect, I do that too, okay? But sonification allows us to actually create an empirical connection between the notes that you're listening to and the volcano and the wind and the water and other things like that. And we still use the tools of composers around that sort of core musical content. But
that's amazing, because you think about, we always say math and music go hand in hand, but I mean, I even think, when we're looking at all the studies being done on the black hole, and now they're recording the sound of the black hole, or the black holes with an S, plurals, because we've got more than one black hole. And it's so fascinating because when something is, it's very hard to touch and understand what the black hole is, and we're still learning about it, right? But I don't know anything about it other than what I listened to, and actually heard they were doing it on an NPR or something when we were driving. We were listening to this, and it's like it's bizarre because being able to hear the black hole kind of gives you this extra connection to something that seems really far out. That do you really believe it's there or not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so and the part of the point you're making, I think, is that it's not only the new information we learn by listening to data, but it's also a whole new kind of human connection that we have. Okay, that gets us connected to that black hole, or the Eclipse project I'm going to be doing in 2024 when the path of totality goes through upstate New York. And working with a marvelous chamber group called 5x5 out of Rochester, with some new music out of that. It's ways for us to engage, invest, and become part of the natural world that just simply looking at a list of numbers really doesn't do for us.
That's awesome.
I want to do it with color. Like I want to take colors and different shades of different colors and assign them a musical note, and then as somebody paints a picture, see if it turns out to be a symphony. That makes sense?
Ladies, get ready for Nancy's music.
Okay, well, let's talk. I'm ready to play here. So.
Right.
Okay. Cool.
Hey, we have a whole room of people in different places. This is the great thing about technology that can make this come together. I want to bring our final guest, and last but not least at all, composer and musician Andy Jarima. He is amazing. When he records Hermit Crabs Under the Ocean,
I love it.
It doesn't really matter. His daughter will play. We're going to play music from both of them, Andy and Glenn. But I encourage you to go to his website, andyjarima.com, and that's JAREMA.com. So welcome back to the show, Andy. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me on, Lisa and Nancy, again. It's so great to be back here with all these fellow artists on the call. I've just been marveling listening to all of you talk about your work and what you're doing right now, and it's just so fabulous to be a part of this big group here.
There's something, too, about you is you're an educator as well, a music educator, a musician as well, and composer. But this is really interesting what you do in regards to recording, and then you're taking the sounds and creating, you're using like nature as the instruments, right? So like you could create your own orchestra with your recordings from nature.
Yeah, it's almost like, instead of composing music using like an orchestra, we swap out all those instruments for birds and waterfalls and things like that.
Cool.
I come from a place where I just love natural sounds. I just love listening to my environment and being just surprised and delighted by what I hear around me. And I often think that can sometimes be a bit invisible if you're not listening to it. It's very easy to tune it out. And so I love to get my recording device out, record it, and then that's where I as a musician come in and sort of tweak those sounds and twist those sounds into something that I think of as musical. So, for example, if, I hear a waterfall, I'll just ask the question, how could this be music? What could I do with this? And, one answer to that might be, well, a waterfall is like white noise, kind of like when you turn on a TV set and you get that staticky sound. Which
Nancy's got the white out on her palette.
Oh, there we go, right? And, white noise has every frequency available to you. That's what white noise is. It's every frequency low to high. And so then you can filter out some of those frequencies and get choosy about which ones you want. And then sort of shorten that attack of that sound you're using from the waterfall to sound more like a snare drum or a bass drum sound. And then voila, you've made a waterfall beat, let's say. So that's kind of my process I sort of use. I start with just by listening and being fascinated by the sound around me, and then letting that interact with my identity as a musician and composer.
Wow. Because I remember the last time you were on the show with Stan Honda, and by the way, we're going to get him back on. We're going to do another reunion show coming up for February, but you both were talking about photography and connecting with music, so the audio and visual can be combined. But we also played the Lava Rocks, and you're talking about how the lava sound kind of made that into like the drum beat in a way. Because of
and quick shout out to Stan Honda, by the way. I was going to mention this at some point. Him and I just actually did a little collaboration together. He paired some of my music with one of his time-lapse photographies out in, I believe it was Joshua Tree.
Cool.
So, yeah, shout out to Stan. Him and I have been doing some great things together, great conversations back and forth. And, one of the great things about your show and doing the National Park Arts Foundation residencies is the community you jump into. It's been so amazing jumping into this collaborative community. But anyways, to answer your question about the lava rocks, when I was out in Hawaii volcanoes, that was one of the most fascinating sounds I heard, is that every lava rock sounds different when you drop it on the ground, because they're all slightly different texturally and density-wise. And so I think I spent, 10 minutes just recording every single possible lava rock I could, dropping it, scraping it, hitting them together, and then sort of turn that into a percussive beat for one of the pieces I made for my residency there. It's just being delighted by sounds like that. It's just incredible. Just, how can I turn this lava rock clanking, together into some sort of musical piece is always just a fun challenge for me.
I love this. I love that there's so many different ways in art. I mean, that's what I think is so great about the National Parks Arts Foundation is they don't limit artists, of any genre, any medium. And it's like you can change as you get to your residency. What you envisioned may change. It usually does, because now you're on the scene. You're in it for that full month residency, which is also really unique that you have that full month residency. So I think what they're doing is amazing. And I love to hear these collaborations. I mean, Andy, that's awesome. One residency. It just keeps going. It's like the ripple effect of it all. That's fantastic. I want to go to the visual artists, though, the painters here, and talk about music and the sounds for when you paint. And then I want to go to the composers and musicians and talk about color and what you see. How does that change your music? Because it's kind of interesting to have two sides of the coin here. So let's start with you, Alice. I know you like music, and she's right near Roy Orbison's birthplace. I'm just saying that's very important.
That is important.
But the sound, do you listen to music when you paint, or do you when you go out? It's about nature. Okay.
I listen to music, and I can tell by what I'm listening to how the painting's going to turn out sometimes, because it's, some paintings need a lot of energy, and so you need something that's really going to pep you up and keep you going. But some, when it gets tedious, You need something that's not going to put you to sleep. So sometimes it's in the studio. You can start working on a piece, and you'll be working on it for off and on for sometimes 5 or 6 months. And if you'll play the same music you played when you first started on it, it's easier to pick back up what you were thinking at the time you were making the image. So that's one way to kind of keep some continuity going. If you have to leave a piece and then come back to it,
that's interesting.
Just play the same music.
It's almost like hypnosis, right? In a way, because it's like your body recognizes it, and you just turn. It's like you've told your body to go into that mode. Like it's a different form of communication and instruction.
Right.
Like
right. There's so many different techniques and things that I use that it's hard sometimes to switch from one location to another. So if you switch the music at the same time, it's a little bit easier. But,
you got to set up the atmosphere.
Yeah.
You know.
Right.
Yeah.
I listen to a lot of classical and then a lot of experimental, and I think it would be really interesting to listen to some of Andy's and Glenn's while I'm working on some of the Hawaii works, and see, because every place has a sound or sounds, and that's part of when you're getting out and into the landscape and trying to get a feel of what it's like. Sometimes I make recordings on my iPhone, just record the water, the sound of the waves on loggerhead. Or when you're at the volcanoes, sometimes if you're real quiet, you can hear Kilauea, the lava flowing down in the caldera. In fact, Kilauea is erupting right now.
I know.
Wow.
Isn't it crazy?
Yeah. Yesterday it started up again. So, yeah, that's pretty exciting. I never have been there when it's been erupting, but I would really love to be there when that happens.
Didn't it all happen once you left the last residency? All of a sudden, the volcano erupted and said, "Oh, Alice has become a grandma, and that's it. We're spouting lava from the island."
Yeah, celebrate.
Yeah,
celebrate.
That's a big fireworks. I mean, forget 4th of July and New Year's. Like that's the real fireworks. Like you can't beat that.
Oh yeah.
I wanted to go to Glenn and Andy to see if either of you have any comments about what Alice was saying about the power of music for what she's doing in the creative process.
Sure, I'll jump in here, Alice. And I think that's fascinating what you're saying about how music puts you in a certain sort of mindset or thought process. And you can almost like recontinue that later. Because I think, music is sort of like sound thoughts, really, in a way. That's how I sort of think about my music sometimes. They're communicating ideas. So I love that it puts you in a certain headspace like that. I really love that.
It works when you cook too. Like if you're going to make an Italian meal, you need to put Italian music on. You got to get with the program. It puts you in the mood.
Yeah. Yeah. We're doing major production with articles and stuff that I have to like snap into it and not let my monkey mind, because I do have a monkey mind brain, like everything wants to talk at once. I have certain albums I'll put on and I'm right in it. It's very weird, like because it's I don't know, you have to get into that zone. So it's very fascinating what music can do for that. Yeah. But I want to go to Pat. Let's talk a little bit about you when you paint. I know you're an environmental artist, also an educator. Do you, when you're painting, and especially plein air painting, are you listening to nature? Do you listen to music? Tell us a little bit about that for you.
In the studio, I tend to listen to music, but when I'm outside painting, I'm getting in touch with my surroundings, the water, the wind, the rustling of the leaves. Sound is very important to me. I'm hearing impaired, and wearing hearing aids is a strange experience because some things are more personified. You hear them stronger, like the wind, perhaps. Sometimes it's blowing into the hearing aids, and it's like a different sound. So I like to be aware of my surroundings. Also, painting sometimes alone. I've gotten startled by deer and grouse. I didn't even know what a grouse was. I was in Minnesota.
That's funny.
This ground bird came and startled me. I think it was as startled as I was, because you're real quiet out there painting. Sometimes the animals don't even realize you're there.
Yeah,
so,
they think you're part of it.
Yeah, and in the studio I listen to all kinds of music, and I was, listening to you guys, I was just thinking of music does put you and places you in another time and place, and I think in advertising, and television, they take advantage of that, and all the oldies but goodies that we're hearing, and they're geared to a certain group, and they're playing this music to get your attention, and it does, it works.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, suddenly the Rolling Stones are in commercials. I'm like, what? Like, it's funny how they do. Yeah, it's memories. Music is part of memories. I remember a friend of mine in a band that we had years ago, a very dear close friend to me. It was our bass player, passed away, and I almost had to stop listening to music because we had so much in common with different music. I mean, there wasn't any music I could listen to that didn't remind me of him at that time, of that early part of the grief stage. And then later, a few days later, it was like, I want to listen to everything. You know what I mean? It's because of the memories, because of the conversations, the gigs, the places, music is incredibly powerful. The arts are, visual arts, I think, is something that it really slows us down, too, to remind us to just sit and actually think about what you're looking at. What do you like? Who are you in this painting that you're looking at? What is it making you feel and think? So it's, even just, I know this sounds weird, but even going in national parks and state parks, all the parks, when you, in museums, and you see the artwork in museums, I mean, that's how it gets us to understand things and learn. It's fascinating to me about the power of arts, but you guys are all part of it and do it. But Nancy, let's talk to you about what does music do for you as you do your fiber art and quilting and painting? But you do a different quilting too. That's a whole other. You do some crazy cool stuff.
Thank you. Well, yeah, I'm probably one of the few artists who shows up at a national park with a sewing machine, but I am also very hard of hearing. I have severe hearing loss, and I also wear hearing aids, but they distort a lot of things. Do. So when I'm out in the park photographing everything, I'm not listening to anything at all. When I'm in the studio, however, I am, because of hearing loss and because of the distortion, it's really hard to listen to music, because when you're listening to it, when a normal hearing person listens to it, you're following along with the melody and you're harmonizing. I studied music in college, so this was really, really hard to take as my hearing loss actually accelerated. So anyway, getting back to what music does, I'm usually thinking about them oldies from when, from 40 years ago. And that's enough for me. Or, like at Fort Union, I was streaming Breaking Bad because I'm not really listening to it. And I've seen it that many times that it didn't matter. It was just noise. It was white noise in the background. And I was in New Mexico. So, the music thing, as much as I would love to be an Alice Lease and use that music and create the magic that she creates, using music to help, I don't know. I don't know. I've been following Alice. Okay, yeah, I'm kissing up to Alice Lease, but I really admire.
Might be on the horse, so be careful, because things happen with
So anyway, I've been following her, and so to hear how much music plays a part in her work, I'm just blown away.
Well, is there also something? Go ahead.
Oh, well, I was going to say thanks, Nancy. And I hear you when you're out there painting, and I think Patricia's this way too. I don't want to listen to anything but the sound of what's around me, usually.
Yeah.
On location, plein air, you want to take in those sounds, so I understand. But in the studio, when it's just you and, you're all by yourself and you need to occupy that part of your brain, and somehow it makes you more focused in some way, if you can keep that part occupied.
Yeah, but you can remember certain music that you've listened to during certain residencies, and you go, I remember. I was driving down in Arizona, and I was listening to the Eagles, and I was like, whoa, rocking out. It was a great road trip,
Yeah.
And it brings you back to that time. But Alice, that I think that's an real important point. That if you put on the same music, it does take you back to that moment.
But you know what's weird is there's also a connection culturally, and I don't know if this is completely woo-woo and weird, but like Joshua Tree, we used to live outside Joshua Tree. It was like literally you could almost walk to the park from our house. It was very nice. But I used to do, the magazine we did a lot in San Diego, and I'd always drive through the park home. And there were certain parts of you've got to think the Native American history of Joshua Tree, all the mining history, the ranching history. I mean, then there's the surveyors, the CC history. There's also, Spanish history back in the day, where Mexican history, So there were certain parts of the park, if I played Mexican music and or Spanish music, it just kind of flowed. And then certain parts of the park, I played Native American music, and it was like, it was happy. Like everything was happy. But if I switched it around, it was like, no, this is this part. It's kind of weird. And I don't know how to explain that, but that's just how it felt. So it could just be me, and it's weird.
No, I think that's correct. Sometimes some artists are visual artists and musicians, and I'm thinking of Peter Hurd right now. He was a visual artist in New Mexico, but he also made a recording of old Spanish ranch songs, and you can find it on iTunes or whatever. And if you put on his music, you start picturing in your mind all his paintings from New Mexico.
Wow.
It's interesting that he recorded all the old songs from his ranch hands so that they wouldn't get lost, sort of like preserving something in time. His paintings were kind of the same way. They preserved a way of life and a landscape that is somewhat disappearing now.
It's very important. The Juan Bautista de Anza National Historic Trail it traces the American route, but it goes south of the border, south of Tucson to Sonora, Mexico, and is where Conquistador Juan Bautista de Anza did this trek, and he led, I'm not going to say, why do I want to say 600, but it was 200 people on foot from Tumacacori and Tubac area, south of Tucson, to what was the Presidio. He founded the Presidio in San Francisco, and that's what is now San Francisco. And they marched all the way. There was only one death, and that was a lady in childbirth, and that happened at San Xavier del Bac, the mission. But there's this book that the Park Service put together with this trail, and that's another thing. I would love to see this residency do entire trails. And last time we talked with Tanya Ortega on the show, she's like, why not? Like the Blue Ridge Parkway, these historic, like the Pony Express, to imagine doing a residency along the entire trail. Like that would be insane. Like cool, like good insane. But there was this book that the Park Service put out for like people like us that are really following it and doing it, and they had a CD in there, and I have this book. It's one of the few things we take in our car, with the recordings, ancestral recordings of Native American, Mexican, Spanish recordings of musicians on this route. So you could be at a place and play it, and that's why we still have our car has a CD player. So you can play this music in that spot that you're in on this trail that came from the cultural, bones of that place. And there's nothing like that. So it's to me, it's very fascinating.
That's amazing.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
And now I'm obsessed with that trail. I'm obsessed with it. It's like a sickness. But people on we need.
That would be a good idea. I mean, the Santa Fe Trail. What if you went all 800 miles of the Santa Fe Trail? Or what if you went along the railroad, or the railroads around, or the Pacific Coast Trail?
El Camino de los Muertos National Historic Trail that goes up through San Antonio, up to Louisiana, up through Texas, Louisiana. Don't start me on the trails. It's a dangerous, dangerous path with us because that's all we do. But I want to go back to our musicians and composers here. Glenn, what do you think about all of this music? Does visual art and the visual surroundings inspire your music? I have to go there. We've got to swap the coin around here.
Well, I think that I'd actually like to bring it back to the cooking metaphor here that we talked about earlier. That as visual artists or musicians or actors or writers, we're all in the business of making connections between ingredients.
True.
And we're all makers of things, and we make things in a short period of time that then becomes something other people can look at or listen to or eat, right? But as creators, we're in the business of connection, and so I think it doesn't surprise me at all that there's a myriad of different ways in which visual artists use music intentionally or are inspired by natural sounds. In terms of the disability conversation we were having earlier, even those folks that are labeled sort of in the normal hearing world, each one of our brains and all that stuff actually hears things differently than the next person beside us. Okay, there's subtle differences in the way we all hear things, but I think as artists and musicians, we are in the business of connection. We're in the business of creating meaning out of ingredients, and whether those ingredients is scientific data, whether it's history or memory, like we talked about earlier. I think that the joy of being an artistic creator is that in the act of making meaning, what we're doing is actually choosing the ingredients that go into the sauce, and then delivering that to an audience in a real time, in a real place. Some of us are lucky enough to have that artistic creation live beyond that moment, but that's not what we're in for. We're in for the moment. We're in for creating meaning now with people in front of us, in which that meaning matters in some way.
I think that's so cool because when you think about our national parks and our parks, whether it's a monument, a state park, just parks in general, because I know the National Parks Arts Foundation definitely works with national parks, but open to all parks. And and that's something we learned too, that all of these parks are connected. And as we look at what's going on in the world with climate, with we're losing land, kind of thing, we have to be partnered. Parks have to partner together to create, just even to keep them, right? Buffer zones for animals, all kinds of things, protect historical places. Whether it's like Alice has a family ranch that is part of history of Texas. One day there might be a park next to her, and it's good that she's got that land next, so that the history of that is all connected. So
let me just heap on a little bit there. In the work that Michelle Schwengel Regala and I have done in Antarctica. Okay, if you look at a world-class, science organization like the National Science Foundation, right? It's the polar division that has an arts residency. Okay, that has pulled together, several generations of amazing artists who have done this work. And because the NSF values the way in which artists can be civic communicators about the natural world. Okay, that we're not marketers, we're not advertisers, but we are fundamental communicators of connecting the general public to the natural world. And by the way, the bottom of the planet is the hardest part of the natural world to connect people to, because so few people have actually ever had the experience. And so I think, just to add on to what you're saying, I think that as meaning makers, as people who are creating expressions that are being seen and heard and experienced, it is more important than ever for artists to be part of the environmental dialogue as this becomes more and more urgent. We now have to be part of the civic space in ways that maybe we haven't been since the 1960s. Okay, when artists were part of the civil rights movement, but to step forward in a concentrated, large, intentional, and significant way to be part of the civic dialogue around ecological restoration.
Well, we've done so many shows with artists and musicians, anybody of the arts over the years. And one thing that has come out very, very strong is that the arts tell the truth about history. Sometimes even more than journalism. And I'm not knocking journalism, good journalism, at all, because it's so vital, right? But the arts document what's going on in a specific time in a way that, I don't know, it's magical and honest. It's real. And the beauty, too, that I was going to say earlier is that, you're talking about disabilities, and just like abilities. Some people are drawn to a painting. If you're deaf, a painting is going to be, or a photograph or a film may be the thing that draws you into that park or place, or that history, culture. And it could be the other way for music, or for dance, so everybody has something different that attracts them, and how we learn things, how we, it's in teaching and education. And Andy, step in on this one. Don't we all have a different way of taking in information? Some of us want to watch. Some of us need the notes. Some of us are nuts and bolts and geek out down the rabbit hole. Everybody's a little different in taking things in. So, Andy, you want to touch on that in regards to learning and being in the moment of now? Because it now takes in all of it. Takes in the past.
Yeah, and what you're talking about is, neurodivergency, right? The idea that there are many ways that people experience the world and sort of take in information about the world, and how do we teach to that? That becomes a very difficult thing. And I know the students that I teach, by the way, I'm a virtual teacher now. I used to be a teacher in the public schools, and now I teach exclusively virtually. And I see students not only all around the country, but all around the world. I have a student in Portugal. I have a student in Wales. So I teach all these students from all these different places with all these different sort of ways that they learn. And so, as a teacher, I have to sort of figure out what are the best ways that I can teach them. And it challenges me as a teacher to be able to do that. And it even goes beyond, are they visual learners? Are they, do they work better with sounds? It goes to, how has, society sort of shaped their ideas of how they learn. So, for example, I have a student who's on the autism spectrum, and I think a lot of the times he thinks the way he thinks about things is wrong. And so I have to sort of encourage him and say, well, no, you see the world in a way different than all of us, and that perspective is valuable, despite what, society might tell you. Neurodivergency is a very interesting sort of field in education, and it challenges me as a teacher to serve my students better.
And where do you think the arts come in for this? Do they help?
Oh, absolutely, because arts are, a way for, the students that I teach are primarily music students. And so that's how they sort of interact with their neurodivergency. They get to express themselves in very unique ways. For example, I have another student who likes to code his own retro video games. He writes all the code himself. He writes all the music from scratch, all by himself. And I think that's his sort of way of interacting with the world and expressing his creativity and his sort of like viewpoint on the world. So yeah, I think the arts plays a large role in that and sort of fostering really open spaces and open communities for that too. I found that, all the sort of weird people I know in the world tend to be in the artist pocket, right? So it's kind of like the space for all the different divergent people to sort of be able to express themselves.
All the freaky people make the beauty of the world. Oh, Michael Frost.
There we go, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think there's a lot of people who have artistic abilities that are too afraid to do something with them, and I wish they would just, like step up there and go have some fun and don't think about trying to sell things or be professional with it. Just go find out what you got, because I know everybody's going to have something.
Mhm.
And I think you miss out if you don't find that something.
Mhm.
A lot of people put it aside. A lot of people don't recognize the importance. I have some private students like in their 40s and their 50s, and they said, now this is my midlife crisis. I'm going to paint. I've wanted to paint it my whole life, and this is what I want to do now because I put it aside because my job and my career was more important. I was very lucky to make it my career being an educator, and I've had all kinds of students I've taught, pre-K through university, and some of my disadvantaged or students that had disabilities were my best students because they excelled in the arts. They kind of that was their best time of the day. That because there was nothing to hold them back.
Cool. I think that's one thing that's so great about the National Parks Arts Foundation is you could be in any place in your career to apply and be accepted. It's just kind of that luck of the draw kind of thing in a way, though it's juried. You have to go through this process, but and you don't always win everything. And Alice, you've done a number through the National Parks Arts Foundation. All of you have done a bunch in different places with different things, but you have to keep applying, right, Alice, to keep going through because you do, and don't just think that if you're new to not apply, right?
Right. I think I applied for 4 or 5 years before I was ever accepted, and then the first place I went was Fort Union, and it was back to conservation. One of the things that the National Parks likes is that one of my things is conservation and stewardship. The National Park Service was created in 1916 to help preserve our parks and to take care of them. And part of that original, one of the reasons they started the parks was there were so many people going, and somebody needed to take care of them. And they were formed so that people could go to the parks. You can't have a national park without a park service to take care of it. So that's part of the compromise is if you want to have these nice places, you're going to need to get people into them to enjoy them. And I think like the musicians that there's many different ways people can experience something and learn, and any way that we can promote these places is if it's through music or the visual arts or any way we can to be an advocate for these places is good.
it helps fund things. I mean, we've talked about this on our wildlife conservation shows for years. That a good friend of ours, late Adam Roberts, always said back in the day, you could be in the Midwest and have never been to the ocean, to the coast. Andy, if you've been to the beach, I think you have since you've been to Hawaii, because I know you're in the Midwest. But
absolutely.
You know, there's a lot of people
there.
who haven't. Yeah, a lot of people haven't, and people got behind saving whales. You know, remember the whole thing about, you know, stop harpooning whales. Yeah. That whole campaign years ago worked with people around the world, whether or not they saw a whale. And it was about messaging. It was about people seeing the beauty and understanding, and that's this role of, you know, art, all forms of it, creates that, oh, beautiful. I mean, come on, if you've read Moby Dick, you're still going to want to save the whale, right? Doesn't all, you know, help?
Yeah, this is true, yeah.
And that whole thing helped stop the harpooning of whales. And, of course, we're still battling, but, you know, I think there's something to that. You don't have to, you want more people in the parks. There's a balance. There's wilderness areas that only so many people can go into. There's shuttle buses in the major parks, now timed entry depending on where it is. So there's a lot of steps being taken. And, you know, the pandemic, like all the parks closed and then opened and everybody's like, we need outside, you know.
Yeah.
So there's this balance we're going through. And the arts really give a way for people, even, you know, just seeing it on Facebook or listening to it, right? Give people a way to connect to a space and help them be part of a movement to protect these places, you know, their history, their nature, their wildlife, all of it, their playground, you know, the playground for humans too. And so the arts, that's what I love about this whole program is, with NPAF, is the artists are able to transcend a space in that your art goes around the world. You know, whether it's in an exhibition or through social media or through virtual events, and they do educational events. I know that kind of went away a little bit during, you know, the pandemic, but, you know, the artists in residence normally do an event. But there's so many ways that people around the world are experiencing the national parks and parks because of these residency programs. So let's touch on that, actually going to that. Alice, I know you have some things coming up in 2023 that we're in now. I've got to remind myself.
Right.
That's happening, and your art's been around. I mean, you've been doing a lot of exhibits, and you've got more coming up. So as you do all of this, your residency plays into that, right?
Oh, yeah. I'm working on proposals for shows to show all 4 residency paintings, all the plein air paintings, and then I bring those back to the studio and create larger work. Like I'm working on a 4-foot by 5-foot right now, and I've got some stretcher bars. One of them is 11 feet long, so that's going to be a big one. But,
cool.
But I'm working on places for this work to go so that people can see it. Also, let's see, in September I'll be at the Trappings of Texas. That's a Texas thing where bit and spur makers and visual artists, sculptors get together and show their work down close to Big Bend National Park in Alpine, Texas, at the Museum of the Big Bend. And then a couple of other things coming up, but it's going to be a great year. I'm trying to stick around close because, you know, there's good things happening here now, so it's fun to stick around and hold the grandbaby.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. I want to go to you, Andy. What's up for you in 2023?
Well, speaking of babies, so my baby daughter is 16 months old. And, you know, it's funny as an artist because, you know, to be an artist, you need, like, oceans of time to, like, really work on your art and do things related to your art, which I don't have as much anymore because I'm spending a lot of time with my daughter. But I love that. I absolutely love that more than anything. I'm home all the time with her and my partner, Danielle, and I just value that time so much, you know. So, this next year is going to be slow for me, which I love because I want to just be home and be with my partner and be with my daughter. But I do have a couple things that I'm looking forward to. One is the Earth Day Art Model Festival. And if anyone hasn't heard of that yet, it's this wonderful festival put on by an artist and musician named Scott Deal. It's a virtual 24-hour festival with people all over the world showing their, art related to the environment, whether that's fixed media. I contributed an audiovisual piece this year, or it could also be live performances happening all over the world with these musicians from several different places and locations. So the Earth Day Art Model Festival is a fantastic event that I'm hoping to be a part of again. It's on Earth Day in April 2023. And then I'm also just beginning to make motions towards some workshops I want to do. I want to do some workshops, both virtually and in person, about birdsong. That's one of the obsessions I've had for the past few years as a musician is how birds vocalize and how they make phrases of their musical, and why musicians and composers have been fascinated with them for so long, for hundreds of years. So I want to do some workshops with artists and the general public to sort of explore that, because I love that topic.
Ooh, what was it like in Hawaii at Volcanoes National Park? Did you get all kinds of good recordings of birds?
Oh, absolutely. The apapane, the oma'o, all sorts of native birds that are endemic just to that island. Just fascinating to listen to. The apapane sounds like R2-D2 from Star Wars. It's this clanky, clickety, metallic sort of sound that you just hear coming through the forest, and you just go, what is that? So, yeah, and that's actually where I first did a workshop on birds, was during my residency in Hawaii in 2019. I had the time and space to sort of pull all these resources and materials together to do that workshop, which is another great thing that I think these residencies do. They give you the time and space to do that. I'm looking to expand on that.
Awesome. Cool. Now, before we get to our next guest on the same question about looking forward to this year, let's play Edda's audio yearbook. You want to tell everybody about this? Because, this is an interesting, it's like a time lapse, but an audio time lapse.
Yeah, so what you're going to hear is 12 months in 1 minute. These are just random recordings I took of my daughter, Edda, as she was sort of growing up and figuring out the world and making all these vocalizations. I had a recording device sitting on my cabinet over here in our living room, and I just record every single sound that I could from her. And so what you're going to hear in the piece is these piano chiming notes that sort of signify a month has passed. And then interspersed throughout all of it, you're going to hear just the complete chaos of Edda's squeaks and coos and mamas and dadas and all her other crazy sounds that she makes.
It's amazing. So here it is, a year and a minute. That's it. I want to make my own mouth music now. I'm going to start. I'm telling you, Nancy knows that I went through that stage as a kid. And I mean, come on, that's exciting to go and do. How much work does it take to put that together? It's so cute. And you can hear her start to form words.
Yeah, it was actually way more work than I thought. Because I think I had something like, oh my gosh, hours and hours of audio footage. So I think my first draft was about a 40-minute one. And so I slowly worked it down from a 40-minute draft into the 1 minute that you heard right there. So it took a lot of refining and replacing, but again, it was so special because it brought me in touch with my daughter in a very unique way, and that's a special artifact that I'll, keep for the rest of my life and hers.
Mm. I want to know what each noise that she's making means? Did you get that far? Like, this means that?
Yes, and I was very intentional about how I sort of placed all the sounds. Each moment is very dense with information. So, for example, in the opening there, you heard a thunderstorm, which rolled through our neighborhood on her due date. And then you heard this heartbeat, which came from the heartbeat monitor when we got to first hear her heartbeat. So yeah, all these sounds are very packed with meaning for me, and it goes by so quickly that it's hard to sit in all of them. But yeah, each one of them is very special.
Okay, so Nancy, when you first asked that question, I'm going, she's blowing bubbles somewhere in there, and I'm like, what's the meaning of the bubbles? You know what I mean? So that's the funny part of it, because kids do make, but it is still part of growing up and learning. And I wanted to ask Glenn what he thought about that recording and piece. It's a gazillion recordings. Would you do something like that?
Well, I'm here in Honolulu visiting my first baby, who is now 28 years old and in graduate school at the University of Hawaii. And in listening to it, it made the last 28 years vanish. Okay, and to bring me back to that time when Mateo was making all of those sounds. That was quite beautiful. Yeah.
I love it. And I think, Alice, you're resonating with that too, right?
Oh yeah, and it's great to hear all these artists talk about their families, because sometimes you hear about crazy artists or artists that are sort of on the fringes, but most of them are really good people and have great families, so that's really neat.
I love it. Nancy, I would go, artist Nancy, what's happening for you for 2023?
Well, I will be, in April, I'll be at Petrified Forest National Park. Looking forward to that. I'll be
my gosh.
Out west
I've been there.
Yes.
It's wonderful. You're going to love it.
It's magic.
Yeah. Wonderful. Gosh. And then next summer, toward the end of December, I'll be at Oak Spring Garden Foundation in Virginia, and I'll be there for 5 weeks. I am really and truly looking forward to that. It's a beautiful place. Absolutely beautiful.
Forest. I can't wait for you to be there. It is magic. Yeah. I mean, the stars at night. Just. There's so much to it, and I can just see the textures and your art. How you're going to get it, the colors and the textures are going to. Yeah, it makes me want to put my hands in dirt for some reason, but.
I can't wait. It's Arizona, so and it's I've never
beautiful
been
time
there.
of year too.
Mm-hmm. Oh, great! Good to know. Mm-hmm.
Beautiful wildflowers will be out.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Oh, awesome. Good. I didn't know. That's wonderful. I also wanted to revisit just briefly what we were talking about earlier about acquiring rejection letters. If there are any artists that are listening to this right now, what I want to tell you is, if you're thinking about applying, do it. Look at it. Look at the questions you need to answer. Look at the things you need to address. Just do it. And if you get that, if you get a polite no thank you, don't let it get you down. I applied to Shenandoah National Park 4 times, but 4 years in a row before I got in. I applied to Death Valley This is my third year in a row. Still haven't gotten in. Do you think that's gonna? You know what? I'm going to apply again next year or this year. This is 2023. I'm going to keep applying until I get in because I want to go there. I want to see it. And what the National Parks Arts Foundation does for us as artists is give us the gift of time. We can go there and visit as tourists, but as tourists, we're only there for a weekend. But if you go as an artist in residence, you have weeks. That's the greatest gift. You get to show up and just go out there and listen to the sounds, look at these vistas that we wouldn't get to see as much of as a tourist. So artists, any artist listening, if you have that, oh, I don't know if I can get in or not, I don't know if I'm good enough, put that conversation aside.
Don't be a negative nunu.
Exactly. And
a nunu?
Don't listen to the negative voice. See, this is where the monkey mind goes in. Monkey minds just want to play, so play. Go for it. Don't allow the negative voice, because we have that. And in the arts, I think because artists wear their heart on the sleeve, really. You're putting yourself out there. So it's a hard thing because it's sensitive and it's an emotional process, no matter how you look at it. Doing the art is too. So, I think you're really right about that, Nancy. And I'm glad you're going, to these other parks and moving forward. And I think, once you've been like in a residency like NPAF, then you've got that as part of your resume to help you get into other ones and different places and do more with them as well. So I want to go back over to Pat. Pat, I know that you've got these residencies you've applied for, but apparently you're hanging out in upstate New York too?
Yes. Like I said before, I'm originally from New York, and COVID got me a little nervous before the vaccines. I kind of thought I really needed a place I could drive to and escape. So I found a little town in the foothills of the Catskills, and I'm there with a college friend, and we have side-by-side studios, and I've been painting up there for the past 2 summers. I've gone to the Adirondacks, to Racket Lake near Lake George. I plan to go there again and do like a workshop for a week, and I'm exhibiting at different galleries up there in Woodstock and Kingston and Wurtsboro, kind of local galleries, and painting outdoors a whole lot. Beautiful there. And awesome. I agree with the rejection. Only I don't call it rejection. It's temporal non-acceptance, because it'll happen. You're right. If you have perseverance. I've had the same experience. I was alternate for 3 times at Acadia National Park, and the 4th time I got it. So I mean, to the point where they're accepting you to be the alternate, but you just don't, get in. So, just to keep on applying, and they get tired of you, and they say, "I'll give it to her already." No.
The squeaky wheel.
It's good for them to know that you're serious about this stuff. I mean, it's for some of us, it's a lifetime existence. This is what we do. We're out there painting, and for some of us, our stuff is out there, and it's showing the parks globally. Like you said, I'm part of the Art in the Embassies program, and a very large painting of mine, which was 10 feet long. Alice just got one 11 feet, so I'm going to have to work on a bigger one.
Oh my gosh, we're getting competitive now.
It's a competition. No, it was a part of the Art in the Embassy program, and was hanging in Nigeria, in Africa.
Nice.
In Niamey. So yes, we're spreading the word about the beauty of our parks all over the world, and that's really important for others to see who don't get the chance.
Yeah,
to see.
Exactly. because we can't do everything. I mean, Nancy and I are trying as much as we can as traveling full time, but we have to work in between.
Mm-hmm.
So, hence we pet sit and hang out in artist studios and whatever. And, it's still, you do what you can. And if, to be in a park for a month, the sky's the limit of what you can do and what rabbit hole you go into, literally, or prairie dog hole. Listen, I want to go back. I want to hang out at a prairie dog village all day long.
Oh, they're so cool.
That's my next thing.
Devil's Tower has a lot of them. My first experience with prairie dogs was at Devil's Tower National Monument. That was incredible. I'd like to take 1 second to thank Gary Bremen. He's a park ranger. He just retired after 36 years at Biscayne National Park. He was there, and he saw my work 20 years ago and asked me to do a show at his community gallery. And he got me started on the national parks. And he's up to like 270 units of the national park system. So he's on a mission, and now that he's retired, he'll get to see a lot more. And it's like you can appreciate the time and energy it takes to go to these parks.
Yeah.
But then he'll be able to spend more time. Yeah.
That's awesome. Alice, do you have prairie dogs on the ranch?
Oh, yes, we do. In fact, in the one of the nearby towns, they have some around the Chamber of Commerce.
See,
and they put up a new windmill, and the vibrations caused all the prairie dogs to move to everybody's houses and tear up their yards. So,
well, see, but this goes back to the power of sound.
Down.
The power of sound, vibration, right? Yeah. How interesting. How interesting. Hey, Nancy, I was going to go back to you real quick on this because you say, you carry your sewing machine to parks. The vibration, does that change for you? I mean, when you're talking about being hearing impaired, so your rhythm and vibration of sewing, isn't that in its own way kind of a tone?
It is indeed. And I, not to brag or anything, but I have a very, very nice sewing machine. So it doesn't vibrate much, and it doesn't make a whole lot of noise. It's quiet as a kitten. Anyway, it's but that rhythm when I'm quilting now. When I was at Fort Union, I don't know how. Maybe it was because it's a 4-week program, but I was able to not only photograph but create 3 quilts while I was there. And quilts take time because first you make the quilt top, then you sandwich and with the different layers, and then you quilt it. I quilted 2 while I was there, but I quilt usually at night, and I'm out in the park during the day. But yes, absolutely, there's something very therapeutic, very what's the word, rhythmic. When I'm quilting, and I quilt very densely, so I'm quilting in very small sections at a time, and changing threads. So yeah, it's very. The word escapes me right now, but it's calming. It's therapy. It's being in tune. And I know how this might sound very woo woo and weird, but that is the time when I'm quilting that's when I'm most in touch, most in tune with. I don't know. I would like to say with the park, with the experience.
The zone. You're in the zone.
Yes, exactly. That's it. In the zone. With that park, with that experience. So, yeah.
Cool.
Yes, it has a musical quality to it. Absolutely.
I love it. I want to go to Glenn. Glenn, I know this year is a big year. Music is back, as you were saying. You're going to, and then next year, track the solar eclipse. I love that. And do the water project with Lake Champlain Watershed. I love this. But we're going to close the show with the song Cry. But before we do that, and obviously we want to hear a little bit more about that, is there anything else we should know what's up for you this year?
Yeah, the Lake Champlain Water Project is clearly growing into a bigger water project. I've gotten some interest in some folks in different parts of the world to do more sonification of water stuff. So in May, I'm going to be on the Elba River in the Czech Republic, visiting things called hunger stones. These are stones that have drought water levels carved into them with dates beside them going all the way back to the late 1500s, and working with some scholars there to run some numbers on that and start to explore that particular thing. The Antarctica stuff around ice and water, the piece you're about to play, the ice is crying, the waters will rise. We're sort of looking at a multi-year water project that's in front of us here now, and really excited about those possibilities.
Water is life.
Yeah. One last thing I just wanted to add to the grant writing discussion here is another way to look at writing grants is the baseball rule. Okay, if you're in baseball and every time you step up to the plate to swing the bat, you fail 7 out of 10 times, you end up in the Hall of Fame.
I like
just
that.
Because some things in the world are just that hard, right? Swinging a cylinder, trying to hit a sphere that's being thrown at you randomly is a very tough thing to do, to hit it between these two artificial lines. Sometimes grant writing is a hard thing too, and that's okay. The fact that it's hard isn't a problem. Sometimes good things are just hard. And baseball reminds us that sometimes if you win 3 out of 10 times, you end up in the Hall of Fame, because some things in life are just like that.
Yeah, you got to believe in a little magic dust, right? I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you all for joining us on the show here, celebrating 7 years. Hey, how about that? So next year will be infinity, which means the sky's the limit, right? I love it. It is. I dig it. But right now we're sitting in the year of luck, right? So 7 years is good. I can't believe we've done 7 years.
I know.
Of interviewing artists. It's pretty amazing, don't you think, Nancy?
Yeah.
Big Blend, Nancy? Yeah.
It's fun.
I mean, when
totally
you go
fun.
through the records, it's like, wow. We've done, shows like this, individual interviews. We've done all kinds of things. And I want to give a shout out to Tanya Ortega and everybody that is on the board, everybody that is part of NPAF as volunteers and work on this whole project, because there is so much work that is involved to make a residency happen. So we also want to thank the donors, everybody who has donated towards this project, and also all the partners. I mean, I have nothing to do with any of that, but I just really respect it. We just run a show, Nancy, but it just takes a village.
Yep.
And Andy, you talked about community, and this is it. This is part of it. Art is a community, and reach out to your art communities too. It's just for us as the listener side, and the people that maybe not be creating the art, but be part of what the artists are doing wherever you can, wherever you are. If there's an art tour, you always hear about artist studio tours. Like here where we are in Peachtree City, they have an artist studio tour every November that goes through 3 counties. You can actually go into their studios and see them work and have a conversation and learn about work that you had no idea existed. It's so exciting. So I want to thank artists and everybody that is part of this program, and of course the parks themselves and everybody that works on them. So thank you all for joining us. We're going to close with a song, Cry, from Glenn McClure. And everyone, let's go through real quick. Any last comments? Give everyone your website. Andy, any last comments before we play music and say goodbye? Oh, Andy's not there. All right, so are you there, Andy? Nope.
Yep, just had to deal with a lovely baby waking up from a nap.
Oh. Well, do you have a diaper to clean?
Uh-oh.
That's probably in my future. That is probably in my future. So sorry,
That's
just made it back on there.
Oh, okay. So give everyone your website and any closing comments or questions.
Sure, everyone. It's Andy Jarima. That's AndyJarema.com. And I just want to say big thanks to Lisa and Nancy for promoting us, promoting the National Park Arts Foundation, and Tanya Ortega, and everything that they do for the artists. I really appreciate what you do for us, Lisa and Nancy. So congratulations on 7 years.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's go to you, Glenn. Artforbrains.com. We can't miss that, right?
Artforbrains.com, yeah. And also, if you want to explore some more of these great nature science artistic communicators, AAWcollective.com. That's the Antarctic Artists and Writers Collective.
Oh, we love that, what you're doing there. NancyHershberger.com is the website. It's Nancy, then HERSHBERGER. So think about Hershey candy. Am I right? You're in Pennsylvania.
Yep.
Let's eat chocolate.
Yep. Oh, always. Yes, absolutely. NancyHershberger.com, and I'm on Facebook at Nancy Hershberger Artist. And thank you, Nancy and Lisa, and the National Parks Arts Foundation. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us. It's been so cool having you all on the show. Patricia Cummins, everyone go to petcummins.com, but remember, go to nationalparkpainter.com. Did I get that right, Pat?
You got it right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you to all the artists for all their hard work, because I know this takes a lot of time and energy to do, all those applications. And, being at the park is icing on the cake, but, there's a lot of legwork prior to getting there. So thank you to all those for persevering and doing it.
Absolutely. AliceLease.com, that's LEESE, even though I said she's got the biggest land lease in Texas. I'm just messing with you, Alice. But it's good to have you back on the show as always. Any closing comments?
Thank you. Yeah. Oh, just thank you to the Park Service and the Rangers and everyone who helps us in this whole process. And, of course, Tanya Ortega and you and Nancy.
Oh, and we'll see you soon.
Okay, great.
See you soon. I know we'll make it happen this year. Everyone, again, the National Parks Arts Foundation, please get involved. Go to nationalparksartsfoundation.org. You'll see them on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram as well. But sign up for their newsletter so you can get, the first thing when they have a new residency, and sometimes they're applying into 2024, maybe even 2025 or 2026. You never know. If you're a destination that wants to have a program in your area, in a park, also contact them. And then, of course, donors, nonprofits need help. So I'm just saying, because I'm allowed to. So go and support awesome projects like the National Parks Arts Foundation. Of course, we're here every first Friday with this show. Keep up with us at bigblendradio.com. If you go there, you'll see links to all the different places we air our shows. And, of course, also nationalparktraveling.com has most of the podcasts we've done over the 7 years, as does blendradioandtv.com. And you'll see a lot of the artists' interviews in our various digital Big Blend magazines. Thank you all for joining us. Here it is, Cry. Thank you so much.